Good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome at this, our first QAF lunch hour. It's very exciting. It's a bit nerve-wracking with that many people. Okay, so I see somebody says that classes would have gone on till 1 o'clock, so they'll join as we go along. So yes, we did get feedback from colleagues that the full day workshops are a bit overwhelming, lots of information, and people often can't set aside a whole day. So that's when we came up with the idea of having shorter sessions, online sessions, and maybe more often, and also to elicit some feedback. But as you heard, some 566 people signed up for this online session, which is going to make it quite difficult to be interactive. But I'm going to try do some interactive things, hopefully, so that we can get some feedback from you even as we go along. So I'm going to start the session. We unfortunately can't do introductions with 290 people in the room, but it's nice that everybody is greeting, and then so one can get an idea of who is around. So please use the chat as much as you can, and use the Q&A if you have specific questions. So I will go to the Q&A at some stage and then respond to that. So the idea for the QAF lunch hour is that we'll have a series of these every second Wednesday of the month for an hour and a half. And I will be doing this one. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Britta Zavada. I'm the Director for Institutional Audits, but I'm currently fully engaged in implementing the QAF. But then in some of the other QAF lunch hours, we will share amongst colleagues. You know, once we focus on accreditation, Dr. Marsha will do it. Once we focus on quality reviews, Dr. Nene will do it, and so on. So really to get bite-sized chunks, smaller topics that we can focus on in a particular session. So I'm going to share my presentation. No, now it's gone. TK, is it the wrong one, right? Is it the correct one now?
Yes, Britta, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So really, just in terms of the engagement, I'm going to try and work with Mentimeter. So I will request you to open your browser separately, obviously, from the meeting itself in the meantime, and go to menti.com. The code will give you again, but I'm going to intersperse my presentation with some questions and for you to participate. So I'm really hoping that will work, but also use the chat and use the Q&A, and I will have sessions, parts of the towards the end where we can actually have actual questions as well. I'll give you the code again, but just so that whilst I'm talking, you can already open Mentimeter with that code. Then maybe just to check in and to see that everybody is on board. Yeah, you see, this is going to be difficult. I'm going to have to go out of this presentation now to go to this first poll. And this is just really for me to see okay. So the question is, how familiar are you with the QAF and the implementation protocols? I've never seen or read these documents. I hope those few people do actually get the documents and make sure to read them. Okay, so it's just for me also to get an idea of who's in the room so that I know not to repeat too many things. So the majority of people have at least had some exposure, I think, to the documents. Please continue to respond because I see there are like 116 responses. It's also important for us to know how widespread the documentation is, how widespread the sort of knowledge and engagement is already. So the next question I have is, how often have you participated in QAF events and workshops? So if you can go to that one, that would also help me to see how long I must stand on the background. So quite a big group of new people. Okay, that's quite interesting. Like mostly people who are not that familiar with the QAF. So I won't skip the earlier part of my presentation. I'll spend a bit of time on that. Please continue with that. Let me just come back to my Okay, so the purpose really of this lunch hour then is to present and discuss aspects of the implementation of the QAF in bite-sized chunks. I've already referred to that. I will give an overview of the QAF, but I would really ask the colleagues who haven't engaged with the QAF to really read the documentation. And there are really two documents at this stage that you have to attend to. The first one is the QAF itself, the Quality Assurance Framework as a document. And the second one is the what we call the implementation protocols. Both of those are available on our website, and it's important that you engage with them. We have asked for feedback on the implementation protocols to reach us by, it was sent out for public comment with Communicate 10 of 2023, but we received very little feedback. So we have extended the due date for the feedback to go till the 15th of April. So it's very important that you get hold of those documents and to give us your feedback. I really want to focus in this hour on the concept of IQA functionality. And so I've really focused it on that because that is partly sort of one of the very new things in the QAF. I'll just go then also through next steps and the QAF in 2024. So the principles of the QAF are those on the screen. You'll see that they are there. They are explained in the QAF document. So I'm not going to spend too much time on them now, but the basic one, which links to our theme today, is this idea of institutional responsibility and accountability for internal quality assurance. This is something that is in the Higher Education Act, that institutions are responsible for quality and for their own quality and quality assurance. It is a fundamental principle that all public universities and private institutions have to take into account. The responsibility of the CHE as the Quality Council is to do external quality assurance. In other words, to just come and check that you are actually doing your internal quality assurance. That has always been part of how the CHE has functioned, but that principle has been eroded in some cases where the responsibility for quality assurance seems to be deferred to the CHE. So this is something that we really want to center in the QAF and the implementation of the QAF. Integration is also very important for the concept of IQA functionality. The idea is that we want to have an integrated view of an institution. Currently, we work very much in silos. So what happens in accreditation and what happens in institutional audits doesn't speak to each other. But the concept of IQA functionality is really
it's only you who see the quality of the work you do. Nobody else except you.
Sorry, thanks, TK. So the idea is really to have an integrated view of an institution, so that what happens in accreditation, what happens in institutional reviews or in qualification reviews speaks to each other, and that we deal with an institution based on a holistic view. The fitness of purpose and fitness for purpose is also very much a known concept. I think the CHE, even the first cycle of institutional audits, used that. And then the idea of differentiation again speaks to this concept of IQA functionality. We do mean differentiation, also different types of institution, public and private, universities of technology as opposed to traditional universities or comprehensive universities, but in the private sector, big institutions as opposed to small niche institutions and so on. But differentiation then also has that different element to it, that we will be making a difference, differentiating how we interact with institutions based on their IQA functionality. So once the QAF is fully implemented, the CHE will not be engaging with institutions in the same way. It will depend on your IQA functionality, how the CHE will interact with you. And I think I'll speak to that more, but I think that's a very important change that is about to happen. Then simplification just speaks to our processes. We're really trying to achieve that. It is harder than one thinks, but we are still aiming to simplify our processes. Then collaboration. Most of you who've been around for some time now will know that we have changed the way we work. We are really trying to engage with the sector more than we've ever done before, really to collaborate with the sector that we are part of, rather than to be sort of external to the sector and just then coming in to police the sector. We really feel that the CHE should be part of the sector, that we should be doing these things together. And then innovation, some of the innovations that I will talk about today is related to the implementation of a management information system for the CHE. And that so we've already started developing some of that, and I will be sharing some of those ideas. So can I just check, are there questions of clarity at this point? Any questions of clarity, Sharon? Just unmute.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Britta. We got the link late. I see it is being recorded. I just want to make sure that we will be getting the presentation, please. The recording later. Thank you.
Yes, you will. Any questions on clarity on the principles, Tamara? Unmute, Tamara.
I want to find out. Yes, can you hear me?
Sorry, I can't
Can you
hear
hear me?
you.
Oh, okay. Right, I'll raise my hand. And now?
Yeah, just speak.
Okay, I just wanted to check. What happened to transformation from the original founding document from the HEQC?
Okay, so transformation, as you rightly point out, was part of the original HEQC founding document. It is there still. It's not part of the principles of the QAF as the QAF stands now. But what has happened in the meantime is that the minister has actually given the CHE the responsibility of transformation oversight. So it is still part of the work of the CHE, and in fact will become a much larger part as we go forward. So it's definitely there. It's not that it's fallen off. It's just that in the QAF principles, in terms of the quality assurance itself, it's not listed as a principle, but the concept and the ideas are very much still there. And then the CHE subscribes to two principles really. The first one is that you can't have quality without transformation, and you can't have transformation without quality. That those two things go very closely hand in hand. And therefore, all of our processes will continue to have that element of transformation embedded in it. So when we develop the higher education practice standards, the qualification standards, transformation is really part of that. But in order for the CHE to do that transformation oversight, we will consult with the sector. It won't come in as a big bang thing. It will have been consulted with the sector. Okay, I then want to go now to the next Mentimeter. So this one, just let me check. So this one is an open-ended one for open-ended responses. And so I would request you to can you see that? Do institutions understand this
Yes.
idea of institutional responsibility and accountable? Do you think it's generally understood, and do they live it? Can we maybe have more expanded responses, not just yes and no? Okay. So you can obviously also use the QR code from your phone. Okay, so quite wide-ranging responses, right? Don't know, yes. Absolutely, yes. Unfortunately, not understood fully. Not sure that it's a main focus, and that the Senate is very bogged down, or the academic board. Well, the Senate with bureaucratic nonsense and political infighting and agendas. Very interesting responses and to look at. So I think it's important that we, and I will collate these and send them out with you as well, so that you do actually get the responses from everybody. So, this is. So I briefly then want to just focus. So this is something we need to work on, obviously, because there is this wide range of how people are responding, and I'll really use that in future sessions to look at that and see what we can do about that. So I really want to focus now on what stays the same in the QAF. So the legislative mandate for accountability of the CHE for external quality assurance, as in the Higher Education Act and the NQF Act, stays the same. So we have that statutory responsibility. The institutional responsibility, as we've just talked about, for internal quality assurance has always been for the institution, and that stays the same. Then that idea of a quality loop, that you have to design an integrated quality management system, you have to implement it, you have to monitor and evaluate it, and you have to have this continuous improvement. That kind of way of working with quality and quality assurance also stays the same. Those are basic principles of quality assurance, which are established and which we all know and understand. So that stays the same. Then the sort of standard and internationally accepted QA methodologies also stay the same. So for example, a review will always start with an institutional self-evaluation. That part where you do a self-evaluation report will stay the same. We have tried to deepen our understanding of what that means. When we did the institutional audits, we did it as institutional audits through the reflexive praxis. And now in the QAF, we talk about the reflexive generative methodology. And maybe one of the topics for a future lunch hour could be on the reflexive generative methodology. What we find is that institutions struggle with this. They are good at describing what they are doing, but they are not good at reflecting and then improving what they are doing. So that loop, that last part of the loop, that continuous improvement through reflection and through generating new ideas isn't really that present. The second methodology that we will continue with is peer review. It's an accepted practice in higher education, also for research, that our work is reviewed by our peers, by others who work in the same kinds of spaces. So the principle of peer review will stay the same. We are implementing it differently as part of the simplification. For example, whereas currently in accreditation, there is a single evaluator looking at your accreditation application and then a recommendation writer. Currently, we are working, or we are beginning to implement communities of practice. So all, say for example, a batch of education applications will go to a community of practice for education, and then they will look at them together. We are hoping that that will improve consistency and will improve the quality of the feedback you get for your accreditation applications. The peer review has always been part of the institutional audits or reviews and of the qualification reviews, so we will continue with that. And then also the idea that all of the reviews that we do and all of the decisions we take as the CHE or the HEQC are based on evidence. And that also won't change. So what are some of the real changes? There are others, but these are some of the ones that we want to highlight at this stage. It is this idea of an integrated approach. We want to create an integrated sector. We want to be treating public and private institutions the same. But we do understand that we have this differentiated system. Institutions have different contexts, different missions, visions, identities, and they are in different places in terms of their IQA functionality. So even though we want to integrate the sector, we also want to be treating institutions differently based on who they are. I've already spoken about this idea of refocusing that institutional responsibility for IQA. And then this idea of collaboration, we've elaborated that into being more than just collaboration, but Dr. Green calls it a humanizing and stewardship approach, so that we work in these third spaces where we're not seen as being just prescriptive, but that we are also developmental, where we are not just, and it's not that sometimes we won't be prescriptive. It's not an either or situation. It is that third space where we have to be both. And it depends on the context. Sometimes we will have to prescribe, and sometimes we can then leave it open to institutions. But also the idea that the CHE remains accountable for what happens in terms of quality in the sector. So we are trying to use this new language of description and a new way of working with the sector. It's been going now for 2 or 3 years, so many people are commenting and responding very positively to that, and we hope that that will continue. That does not mean that when it's necessary to protect students, that we will not put on the accountability hat, because there is that part of our role that remains there. But then also some of the changes are that we want to harness digital technologies. And I'll talk a little bit to the MIS and the QA dashboards per institution. So just, we always use this picture as a kind of the QAF in a nutshell. So you will see that in the middle are standards, and there will be 2 types of standards in the QAF. The qualification standards will continue and will be scaled up. And then there will be higher education practice standards, which will eventually then replace the current institutional audit standards and even the program accreditation criteria. So at the core, really integrating all of this are the standards. Everything will be based on the standards. And we are currently busy with developing them, and we will consult, and we are going to use the QAF lunch hours to consult on the 15 standards that we are currently busy developing. The 2 main EQA functions that the CHE will perform is accreditation and quality reviews. Quality reviews, qualification reviews, institutional reviews. The institutional audits will eventually go over to being institutional reviews and also themed reviews. And as I said, we'll have specific lunch hours on each of those aspects. So in terms of the integrating functions, we'll use quality promotion and capacity development. Then the HEQC has decided on learning and teaching as a focus for the first iteration of the QAF. So 13 of the 15 standards will be related to learning and teaching. And then there will be 1 standard for research and innovation and 1 for community engagement. But then Tamara, there you will see now transformation is actually an integrating theme that goes through absolutely everything we do. And it's sort of part of everything so it'll be part of the reviews, it'll be part of the standards, it'll be part of accreditation throughout. So, and for those people who said that they haven't interacted with the documents, it's very important that you do. But once you start getting multiple documents, it's sometimes difficult to understand how to interact with them. So the strategic document is the QAF itself. It was approved in 2020, so it's been around for quite some time. It gives that strategic vision, the underlying principles, broad descriptions and so on of how to do, how we're going to do this. So that's the sort of basic document. Then this implementation protocols document takes that QAF and unpacks it into more detail. That is the document version 4 of which is currently in the sector for public comment, and that you must please comment on before the 15th of April. Then the set of higher education practice standards will form the basis of how we do the reviews and accreditation. That's another form of integration. The same practice standards will be used in reviews and in accreditation, not 2 separate sets of standards. And then now a smaller level, a lower level kind of document is that we will be doing sets of manuals for specific details, which will be much more operational and which will include, for example, the criteria. But the criteria will be derived from the standards. So, for example, we will have a manual for accreditation and a manual for institutional reviews and a manual for specific themed reviews. So this is just to help you to understand how the documents fit together so that you know how to read them. Okay, so I'll ask questions of clarity, and then we're going to go to Mentimeter for a word cloud. The questions are, you can think about them so long. How do you experience the changes? And what can the CHE do to embed the changes more effectively? So I'm just going to check our questions of clarity. Lindy?
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you for the engagement. I'm just wondering, I think most of us sitting here, we're looking forward to hear more about the self-regulation. How will that align to the quality assurance framework? And how do we see SAQA's role playing out in the main, as it were? Thanks.
Okay, you're kind of preempting where I'm going. So if it's okay, I'll check in. If I don't remember, I'll check in with you at the end whether I've answered your question. Odwa? Hi, Odwa. You have to unmute.
Hi, Doc. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation. I think my question is similar to the other one, but with the fact that even SAQA has developed guidelines now, and when they look at qualifications, we have experience from our end that a qualification is accredited by CHE, but when it goes to SAQA brings it back and say it doesn't have a right purpose, correct purpose, and the exit level outcomes are wrong and the assessment criteria is wrong, which I felt is what is done because that is part of the design. So when the evaluators sit in the at CHE, they look at the coherence of the program. Now, if it comes from SAQA after it has received accreditation, we are waiting for SAQA ID, and then it comes back to say you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have that. It now creates two processes of accreditation that are really tedious. That might even take us 4 years now. I'm sorry to raise it here. Perhaps I would, if I found the right platform, I would raise it. And there are these guidelines that we might not even have known. I got these guidelines, I think, a week ago when I started to look, because I don't think they were shared with us in the institutions. Thanks.
Thanks, Odwa. Will you send that to me so that I can just have a look at it as well to see what was sent to you? We are engaging with SAQA on this matter, and you will remember that this new accreditation and registration form, the AR, the so-called AR form, was actually meant to address this, so that SAQA and the CHE, like we have currently not consecutive processes, but that we have parallel processes. And so that we can capture those things in one process. But that has not functioned as well as it should have. And so we are engaging with SAQA on this. I can't give you a specific answer, but we are aware of that problem and we are trying to work on it. That's all I can say at this stage. Thanks, Odwa. Rhiannon, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Rhiannon Reid.
Yes, thanks, Britta. I always enjoy your sessions. Just a quick question. You mentioned creating a QA dashboard. Is CHE going to create that for all the institutions, or is it the institution's responsibility to create that for themselves?
No, it's our dashboard, and you are also preempting the rest of the presentation.
Okay.
I'm actually going to show you what it looks like. There seems to be, but let me use your question as a way to address some misconception. When we talk about the management information system, people always think that you have to do something. You don't have to do anything. It's the CHE's management information system. You just have to have devices and connection to the internet so that you can access it. You don't have to develop your own MIS or dashboards or any. Well, I mean, you're welcome to for your own purposes. But this one that we are talking about is the CHE's one. And I will show you actually what it looks like later on in the presentation. Okay, let me just go again now to the Mentimeter. The next question then, how do you experience the changes in the QAF?
Please share the QR code, Dr. Zawada.
Oh yeah, sorry. I opened it here and then I forgot to, sorry, it's just juggling. This thing gets a bit, yeah.
Thanks.
I'm not going to read what it says. You can all see what it's doing. Daunting seems to be the most, but then positive, interesting. I see complex there, quite big. And that is actually, you'll remember that one of the principles was simplification. And that's actually our biggest challenge at the moment, is to try and make it simpler. And it's not, higher education is not simple. So I see there was a slow there, so we're too slow to. Okay, actually quite a nice mix of both positive feedback, but then also this idea that it is a bit daunting and overwhelming coming through. Okay. And then what can the CHE do to embed the changes more effectively and throughout in the sector and throughout your institution? Okay, so if you look at the funding and the roadshow together, the QAF lunch hour is one of those, trying to do something like a roadshow, but with little funding. And we will continue to communicate and to do workshops. Communication is quite big, TK, clear communication, continued engagement. Training. So in the QAF, there's the idea of capacity development comes back very strongly. So that will continue. The CHE started with very strong capacity development, but it's sort of gone back a bit over time. So we will continue with that. Listen, speed up. Okay. Workshops like this. Give examples. Okay, this is really going to help me to tailor make future sort of sessions. Please continue to put your responses. I see we're not at 300 yet, but I'm going to continue, but you're welcome to keep doing your responses. It is open, so you should technically be able to. Where was I? Okay, so the whole idea is that we use the concept IQA functionality as a basis for this differentiated way of working with institutions. And Lindy, to some extent, it speaks to the self-regulation in terms of who will get self-approval for example, programs. So just to re-emphasize that institutions are responsible for their own quality and quality assurance. And then the definition really there, and it is in the documents, IQA functionality will be based on a track record over time. So it's not a once-off thing, just like an institutional audit. It will include the institutional audit, all your accreditation applications, qualification reviews over time. And then they will be measured against the practice standards, the HIPs, and the qualification standards. So the standards will form the basis for deciding on IQA functionality, and then judged by your peers, and then in a number of activities, as I've said, institutional reviews, accreditation, and so on, as well as some of the other relevant information. And I'll show you the dashboards just now. It will not be a quantitative enumeration of outcomes. It will, or a numerical, like adding things together. There will be an HEQ subcommittee which will look specifically at this and make sort of informed qualitative decisions, but the information obviously will be available. And then to create that differentiation, the CHE will work differently with different institutions, so that we can focus our capacity development on those that really need it. It's unnecessary for us to do capacity development for the institutions that are doing well, and maybe they can even teach us and others how to do it. So really to focus our capacity development where it's needed. Then there will be differentiated review cycles between 5, some will have 5 and some will have 8 years. And we have cleared this with DHET for the private institutions. And then there will be that program approval status, or what Lindy calls self-regulation, for functional institutions. But we have to retain that idea that we can withdraw accreditation of institutions that are not doing well. So in the document, you will see that these are the functionality levels that we talk about. As I said, the red on the left-hand side for institutions or programs or qualifications that are not doing well, we have to retain that accountability that we can withdraw accreditation. Then at the far right-hand side are institutions that will be highly functional, and they will only have their institutional reviews every 8 years, and the institution will have what we call program approval status. Level 3 is there might be targeted development and support where it's needed. They will also have an 8-year review cycle and also have program approval status. So the idea is really then to move everybody to those green blocks on the right-hand side. But unfortunately, we do have institutions that are only partly functional, where the IQA is only partly functional. And that is there where we will focus capacity development in identified areas of weakness with ongoing engagement. Those institutions will have review periods of 5 years. So we had that at 3 years at one point, but then we decided 3 years is not enough to really change an institution. So we want to allow institutions that time to really make those improvements, but with support and capacity developments. Those institutions will not be able to put new accreditation applications outside of the field in which you are already operating. So say, for example, a University of Technology has not been operating in electrical engineering, and now if they are on level 2, they won't be able to start electrical engineering if they are on level 2. They have to get to level 3 first to start electrical engineering. Similarly, in the private sector, if an institution has not been in, for example, education before, if they are on level 2, they can't jump into ECD because that is now a lucrative new opportunity. They will have to be at level 3 first before they can do that. And then the orange lights flickering is level 1, where there are serious questions about continued sustainability. There will be a limited window of opportunity for intense capacity development and rapid improvement, because here students are at risk. We will engage intensely with the institution, but also for a 5-year period to allow that turnaround. But in that time, until the turnaround happens and they are at least at level 2 or level 3, they will not be able to put in new accreditation submissions. Unless, of course, it's if that is part of the improvement, there's that sort of proviso. But what we have found is that institutions often, if they struggle in one area, they just put in new accreditation applications instead of servicing the students that they already have and working on what they are already doing and improving that. So that's really to avoid that. So here we get to the dashboard. So this, you'll see in the top left-hand there, this is the overall QA dashboard. Please don't look at the data. This is dummy data. It's not real data. It's just to give you an idea that this is for the sector. We'll be able to see all the sector, according to this dummy data, is at 2.33, so not so good. It's based on 6 quality reviews, and it's based on 5 accreditations, which obviously isn't a lot, right? So you will see then on the far right-hand side, we can see how many institutions have limited functionality, how many institutions are functional or partly functional or highly functional. And then in the middle, the institutions, as I've said again, focus on that Cape Love College, because you'll see that this is, like I said, it's dummy data. So please don't go out there and say UNISA is at 3 or anything like that. The donut chart speaks to the standards. So the light blue that is at 4 is for standard, which is the number there is IA3. And then in the live version of this, when you hover here, you can actually see the standard. So we can break it down into the standards and see which of the standards are giving institutions trouble. And then at the bottom here, you'll see the trend analysis. The sector has, for accreditations, has stayed the dark blue line more or less equal, but for quality reviews, it's gone up from 2.5 to 3, and then dropped to 1, and then up to 3. So this is for the sector, right? And so we will have that overview as well. But we will also have an institutional review. So I deliberately made this one for this non-existing college called Cape Love College. And so you can see their overall IQA is a 2. It's based on 1 quality review and 3 accreditations. And then we're still working on this middle part. It might not look exactly like that, but you can also see there's a trend analysis for accreditation. It's gone up from 2 to 4, so they've definitely improved. But there was only 1 in quality review, so it's just a dot there. But then in terms of the standards, you would be able then to see that in this college, the purple standard, which is IA11, and if in the live dashboard, if you hover here, it gives you the description. That is what Cape Love College struggles with. Yeah, both the purple, the orange, and the dark blue one is what they struggle with. And so we can engage this institution and talk to them about, say for example, the purple relates to how they do their assessments, just for argument's sake. Then we can engage the institution on how assessments are done and that they need to improve on that, and so forth. So I'll just give you a moment to have a look at it. On the left-hand side here, you can see I can, in a live system, I can click on highly functional, and then it'll show me only what they've done that's highly functional. And if I can just go back for a moment, if I, on the left-hand side, I can slice and dice this information in a lot of different ways. So I can look at all the institution categories. I can look at all the universities of technologies in one go, or I can look at all the private institutions as opposed to the public universities. Institutional type, at the moment, we've just got the universities of technology, comprehensive and research intensive, or private there. And then here we can, for example, click on limited functionality and see all the institutions that currently have limited functionality. So can I just check questions of clarity, and then I'll go to a poll. And there are quite a few questions on the QA, on IQA functionality and the dashboards. So let me just stop sharing for a moment. Dion de Toy, can you just introduce yourself? I'm not sure I know you. I can't hear you, Dion.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. Good afternoon, Dr. Britta and colleagues. My name is Dion de Toy. I represent Skills Pro and its affiliate NetSkills. The question I have is, it was before you showed the dashboard, the slide that had where you referred to what happens with an application, and the question I had there was about the timelines. Are there specific timelines specified to those specific steps? Are those timelines indicative, or are they more on the line of an SLA that one can hold whoever's looking at the application accountable to respond within those timelines?
Sorry, I had absolutely nothing on timelines in my presentation, so I'm not sure what you are referring to. Is it the one with the steps, like the little steps?
Yes. No.
Okay.
No, it was before the steps. You had a slide about the steps on the application.
This is not about applications. I've not spoken about applications at all. So I'm struggling to understand your question.
Well, are you able to scroll back on the slide?
Okay, I can. Let me go back. Okay.
Yeah, that one right there that says functionality is user based on a track record over time. The one review cycle there is indicated as 5 to 8 years. That's the only timeline provided.
But that's the timeline in terms of which you will be reviewed by the CHE. And those reviews will be initiated by the CHE.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So you obviously have your, I'm assuming you have your answer. Can I just see whose hand is up? Annelien Keert?
Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Annalene Kietia from Nelson Mandela University. I see I did post my question on the chat as well, and somebody from another university had a similar one, Ronaldo Jager. So I wanted to know just what's the level of data on the dashboard that is from one institution that is available to other institutions to see as well. And then I have to go also after you've responded to my question. Thank you so much.
Okay, so no, it's not public information. You won't be able to see anybody else's information. Institutions will only be able to see their information. And so it's not meant to be public knowledge. It's not meant to be publicized. It'll be between the CHE and the institution. That's the first thing. And then I saw in the chat also, institutions will have to decide who has access to that information, and it will have to be signed off like at VC level. And at the moment we're not really at a place where we can show, like, open it to institutions. So I will draw, for example, at some point I can be able to draw reports, like we can export reports from the live system and we can share that with institutions. But yes, it won't be public knowledge. It will be between the institution and the CHE, much like your institutional audit reports currently are. Tamara? You have to unmute.
Sorry, I don't know how it got on. My apologies. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, so who would have access to the dashboard? Only Eugenie, only institutions themselves. And yes, the institution will decide who has that role or position. And then I see, Mario, you also asked about the access. I've answered that. Then Carmen, you say we would appreciate more guidance or perhaps good case studies on research, as well as community engagement scholarship, specifically as they are now in the private institutions. Okay, so if you look at the current institutional audits, there's a supplementary guide for institutional audits of private higher education institutions. We worked with a community of practice from the private sector to around research and community engagement. So there's already something there if you want to go and have a look. But it is something that we can work on more, and I note your comment. Let me just quickly check the chat. Let me just okay, I'm going to share the Menti for the next question, and then I'll have a look at the chat just now. So let's just go to the next Menti question. If you can start responding to this, thank you. So most people seem to understand. There's some that still feel that it's vague and have some questions. So I'm hoping those are the questions in the chat. So one of the things I thought of doing was to actually share the live dashboard with you to show you better how it works. But the thing is, I will have to create dummy data for institutions first. So that's something I can do in the future so that you can actually see how it works. Rather than just a kind of a screenshot in time. But I don't really want to use institutional, like real institutional data. So I'll have to dream up all this dummy data. Okay, so can we go to the next question? Those that 27 that say, I understand, but have some questions, can you please make sure that you put your questions in the chat, even if I don't get to them before past. It'll help me to guide my future presentations and the kind of things that we have to respond to. Then the next one now is, will this idea of IQA functionality support us to do the differentiation, to work with the institutions differently? Okay, so the unclear, I think, as maybe you're thinking the proof will be in the pudding, and we'll have to see if it.
You are muted, Britta.
Thank you. I don't know how that happened. Okay, so maybe those that say unclear, I have this sort of, we'll see how it goes. The proof will be in the pudding. And those that say no, I'm not sure. I would like to understand why you think it won't help us, but please put comments to that effect in the chat. And then what are your first responses, like when you saw the dashboards? What did you think? Informative, useful, exciting, clear, detailed, valuable information, a holistic approach. Okay. Thank you. That looks very good. I'll please continue. I think I have to move on. You know, an hour and a half is very short. We'll do our best. Okay, whilst I've opened this now, so you can also look at suggested topics for the next QAF that you want us to talk about. I'm just trying to see. Okay, good afternoon. I'm just trying to go through the questions quickly in the chat. Whose hand is up? Is that Ayapi? Please.
It's mine. I just want to ask for this dashboard, what kind of history will be reflected from a particular institution? Are we starting with a clean slate, or are we incorporating everything from the past? And the reason why I'm asking that is that the evaluation process has got 3 levels: evaluator, recommendation writer, accreditation committee. The recommendation writers, the evaluators, are experienced, but it's all subjective. So sometimes the application is not very successful, but also the conditions that we get aren't very valid. So then it goes to the accreditation committee, and for some reason it comes back like that with 5, 6 invalid conditions, or somewhere in the process they haven't read the evidence that was submitted. So your history may look a bit bad, but it's not always based on your own error or lack of insight into what has to be submitted. So 2 questions. what history will be taken into account in terms of submissions? And secondly, how are we going to avoid the issue of subjectivity in evaluating institutions' programs and everything else? Thank you.
Okay, let me start with the last one, Yapi. I think the idea, and it's not like the CHE is not aware of some of these things, and the ACE Accreditation Committee. So the idea of the communities of practice to replace the individual evaluator and recommendation writer is the way that we are going to try and address that sort of, inconsistencies and sometimes different messages going through. And eventually in the overall management information system, it will be written on the system. So everybody will be able to see the entire history, and will have to take responsibility for where things have changed and so on. But the main difference there is the community of practice in an area who will evaluate and hopefully will get better consistency and better outcomes that way, and better communication of the outcomes. It will be, the dashboard will be purely based on HEQC decisions. So it won't be anything in between that happens before. And one of the QAF lunch hours will be specifically about accreditation, so we can talk about some of those things there. And then the other question is the history, right? So in the institutional audits framework, it says that the audits will form part of the baseline, right? And we are still, some people aren't happy with that. So we are still evaluating. What we are going to do is to put the institutional audit information in, especially we finished with the public universities, right? So to have that view, and then we will look at the accreditation applications over, say, the last 2 or 3 years. But it'll only be like a baseline. No decisions will be based on that yet. It's almost more to see if the system actually works and if it gives us information. The actual system will only start from a particular point. So we won't go and fetch your not accredited decision from 2014 and hold it against you, if you know what I mean. Do a baseline to just see if the system is working, if it gives us that kind of the right kind of information, and so on. So can I just go through the hands, Sharon and then Paul? Sharon?
Thank you. I just want to find out the accreditation process as it currently is didn't have any room for appeals, if I can call that, and this links to Yapi's question. The conditions, sometimes we do not agree with them, and it's truly an error. Now having your communities of practice looking at a particular application should reduce that kind of error, that we hope. And then also, so that's a common question thing, in terms of appealing the conditions before you respond to the conditions, to say, but this is truly a mistake from the AC. And then in terms of harnessing the affordances of digital technologies, after we've submitted on HEQC online, there may still be, if there are conditions, then it is handled through email communication, and you've lost on the system that tracking of that application. Can we make that part of the system so that all the communication is in the same place on a particular application, please? And then I suppose you mentioned that we will not be applying the accreditation criteria anymore, but the standards. So how far are the standards out of the 15 or 16? I think you did say that how many were related to teaching and learning, or learning and teaching. How far are they? When will they be done? And when can we expect the new standards for accreditation? And then also a question, or I suppose yes, that we will only be able, you will only then, that will then be part of our track record from the standards that we will be provided, and not the previous documentation.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
so there were a lot of questions in there, but I think the tracking of applications through the system in the new MIS should work much better, so that all the information is together. Then, if you read the document carefully, there won't be conditions. The whole notion of conditions will fall away under the QAF. There will be no conditions. You will either be accredited or not accredited. Because these conditions created complete drag in the system in terms of timelines for you and for us. And then, you know, some institutions never come back with those conditions. And then it's a half-finished, it sits there as a half-finished application. So there might therefore be more not accredited, because serious, or in the past would have been serious conditions, might end up then leading to a not accredited. But you'll get hopefully then proper feedback, and we'll be able to resubmit more quickly. I want us to, and I hope you go, because it's 1:15 already. I want to ask you if we can park the accreditation questions for the QAF lunch hour that's dedicated to accreditation. Because first of all, I don't work in accreditations, and so it'll be better to have the accreditation team here to speak to some of these issues. And it's not like we don't know these questions. These are the same questions that keep coming up over and over. So we will try and attend to them in that session, if I may. Can I just check quickly in terms, so that when will the practice standards, like I said, we've got 12 of the 15. I still have to do the last 3 now. And we also used communities of practice to develop them. And then in a few months, probably by around May, we'll start consultation around those practice standards. So that answers some of the questions around when will they be, we will be available. Then I will look at the chat just now, but I just need to go back. I see there's a question on the cost for institutions. Yes, the QAF will have a cost recovery model, and in this case, it will not refer, it will be for the public institutions as well. So there will be a cost. The dashboard will be updated after every HEQC meeting, not every 5 to 8 years. So it will be after every HEQC meeting, all the decisions will be entered into the dashboard, which will update it. And yes, the CHE, the idea is that it will help us to give you better support, Yesha. Okay, a lot of the questions are around accreditation, so I'm going to park those for the accreditation version of the QAF lunch hour. I just want to go back to my presentation quickly because we are running out of time. Yeah. Okay, let me just, sorry, I have to actually do TK. Yeah. Paul, sorry, your hand was up earlier. Just unmute yourself and then you can start talking.
Thanks, Doc. It's more of a comment really on the functionality levels that you referred to earlier. And I'm just thinking that 5 years in the case of private higher institutions is quite a long time. A lot can happen in 5 years. An institution can go from bad to really amazing in 5 years. So the idea that there's a punitive part that exists because an institution has been deemed to lack in one area or the other, and then they're kind of given a blanket prohibition from new programs and all of that, might well be a problem, because what if that program is actually the lifeline that that institution needs to get its ducks in a row? I've seen it happen before, you know. that the one program is actually the one that brings in more students, and because it brings in more students, the institution builds capacity to actually have a very, very solid QA team in place. So just some food for thought, whether that 5-year aspect doesn't actually cripple institutions, smaller institutions, that is. Yeah, that's just a comment.
Yeah, but I think I've addressed that the dashboard will be updated, and the HEQC meets between 4 and 6 times in a year. And if we see, and you'll remember there was the trend analysis at the bottom, if we see a major improvement in an institution in a shorter period of time, then that can be considered. So it caters for that. So just about the EQA, the implementation protocols document, please, we need public comment by the 15th of April. Once we've received that, we'll revise the document and hopefully have it approved by July and publish it. And then we will do wide-scale capacity development, but even this is already part of it. But we just need that feedback so that we can continue. Then, in terms of the QAF and its implementation, it's not one big bang approach, it's a phased approach. And the reality is that we've already implemented elements and parts of it. So we will bring aspects online as we are ready to implement them. So for standards development, we will finalize the full set of HEPs, consult on them and publish them hopefully by the end of this year. We will continue with capacity development. And then with accreditation, that development of the accreditation manual is really crucial. And as you've seen now, and it happens to me in every workshop I do on the QAF, we always come back to accreditation, and that seems to be the burning point. So that's something we're going to focus on. And then the next one, in terms of the quality reviews, remember that there will be the themed review actually on modes of provision, so that those of you who are accredited for contact only can continue in an online and blended mode. And if you haven't sent in your name, you need to send in your name for that. So we're going to do that this year as well. And the HEPs for modes of provision is finished. We are just busy working on the manual for the themed review, and we will consult with you on that. And then the HEQC task team that will look into IQA functionality status will also start working more deliberately, and some of your feedback will be taken into consideration there. And then developing the accreditation online component of the MIS is actually our next step, because that is where I think a lot of the problems and issues will be resolved, hopefully. So just in terms, I've already opened the one on the suggested topics, and I would just like to see how you experience this. Let me just now. Sorry. Okay, so suggested topics, obviously accreditation, and I'll have a look at the other ones. Self-regulation, it's the self-approval status. EQA in detail, IQA in detail, yeah, I see many responses. And then just give me some feedback, please, on how this worked for you. I know I was juggling, I had to juggle the two, but just to get some idea if this could work you know, actually, if there are that many people in the room, it's hard to then like try and make it interactive and try and get people's feedback and so on. I'll probably experiment with some other tools as well, and we'll look at which ones work best. Okay, so generally positive. Please, you know, stay on that and keep giving me feedback. in terms of my own like presentation so far, I think I'm done. Yeah, so the next QAF lunch hour will be on the 10th of April, and you've given me some ideas on topics there. I'll go through the chat, and there won't be time for me to respond to all the questions in the chat, but I think what I'll do is to compile maybe something that's usable and send it out to all of you, so that all the questions are answered. Maybe just to have a last round, if there's anybody with questions. If your question is in the chat and you have a burning need for me to respond to it, you're welcome to put up your hand. We have like 5 minutes. Are there no hand? Oh, wait.
No, wait.
There's a
Johan?
hand from Johan.
Johan?
I asked a question about a service level agreement. If there's cost, then it means that the institution is a client. And then there needs to be a service level agreement, something which has been sadly lacking from our relationship with the CHE in the past and has led to all sorts of unsavory experiences. So I would very much like to know what the thinking is on that score.
Okay, so one of the purposes of the QAF overall, but then also specifically of going the management information system approach, is that we'll have a much better tracking of what's actually happening. Because so many things ended up being done outside the HEQC online via email, you know, somebody mentioned, and then the information isn't in one place, and this colleague leaves, or they have a whole lot of emails which they simply don't respond to. So that is a reality. There are many different reasons for it, which I'm not going to go into. But the whole idea is that with a management information system, there will be better tracking. There'll be a better view for the senior managers and directors to see where things are getting stuck. And as you say, so the idea is to simplify, to have better tracking, and then to make sure that we have a 6 months turnaround. And that is being achieved as we speak. So in the last year, we've pulled back the turnaround time on applications from 8 months to 6 months. And that is actually an APP target of the CHE, that accreditation applications are completed within 6 months. What then messed up the whole thing again was that a whole lot of applications were found outside of the system, which had to be dealt with. The AC and the HEQC have been having special meetings to deal with those. And the HEQC meeting in April will have dealt with all the backlogged accreditation applications. But I hear what you're saying about a kind of service level agreement that has to go with the cost recovery model. Thank you for that input. I think it's an important aspect, and we will build that into the cost recovery aspect of it. As you say, if you're a paying client, you need to have some certainty that you're going to get the service within a particular time frame. I'll definitely take that on board.
Thank you.
Thanks for that input and giving me something to hook it onto, you know, to yeah. Any other questions? I see people are beginning to leave, so that's okay too, because it was meant to be 90 minutes. If you can, maybe some reflections. Oh yes, I can see. Yes, we will send, Tika will send the presentations to everybody who is registered. I see somebody, Charlene, that has been because of backlogs, and for the backlogs were there, and I see somebody mentions 36 months. So these are in that backlog, and hopefully that, as far as I understand it, it has been cleared, or it will be cleared at the next HEQC. But we're working on it. It's not like we're not aware and we're not working on this. Okay, so it's 29 minutes past, there are no hands. So from my side, just thank you, everybody. Thank you for your participation and for giving me wonderful feedback, which I hopefully can work with. And then I'll get the chat and distill some of the questions from that and answer them in either a next session or in a document. I'll think how best to do it. Thank you very much for your presence and for your participation. And have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye, everybody.